Special episode this week in a video that Mr. Fred Minnick put together. He put it out last week, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Available alternatives to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. It was a good challenge to think about once I saw the video, so after sitting down and really thinking this through, I've come up with what I think is a pretty good list. Let's see how I did. The Buffalo Trace Antique Collection is one of the most highly coveted releases that come out every year. Everyone wants it, and it's nearly impossible to get for most people unless you have some great liquor store connections, get lucky in lotteries or raffles, or have a lot of disposable income to pay outlandish markups at either stores or for samples at bars. And it seems like they're going up each and every year. Now, replacing BTAC may seem laughable to some since they are a set of high-aged whiskeys that some folks say have no alternatives, and I admit that may be true to a certain extent, but I believe a few of these BTAC offerings do have some fair alternatives to look for. I'll say some of these you will still need to do some hunting to get, but most likely you won't need a raffle ticket or thousands of dollars to obtain these. When I say these, I'm talking about George T Stag, William LaRue Weller, Thomas H. Handy, Sazerac 18, and Eagle Rare 17. I'll give you guys a couple options for each one. As I said, some will be harder to find than others, but let's see how this goes. First is George T Stag, the uncut, unfiltered 15-year beast of a bourbon that's usually the most available and probably, arguably, one of the favorites of the lineup every year. Well, except this year, George T Stag will not be part of the release because the 15-year-old barrels, according to Buffalo Trace, did not meet the distillery's taste standards for the Stag brand. So where do Stag lovers go? Well, Stag Jr., as we know, is a great alternative in theory, but this bottle itself has gotten really hard to find, and you're looking also at a big drop in age as well. So there are a few options here, but the challenge is to find something with good age and proof that's hopefully a little bit more attainable than even Stag Jr. All right, first one is a no-brainer. It's probably the first one that a lot of you think of. It's Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. It's not 15 years old, but it's 12 years old. We're looking at strengths in proof that are pretty close from year to year. Anything from 116 all the way up to sometimes over 130. Distribution on these can be sporadic. Some states still carry releases from previous years, so you never know what you may find. Retails for about 70 bucks, can be seen for 100 in some places. To me, it's still a banger and still worth it even at that price. Second is one that Fred called out, and that's Rare Breed from Wild Turkey. One of my favorite bottles of all time that's ever available. I absolutely love this stuff. Wild Turkey Rare Breed, supposedly a blend of 6 to 8 and 12-year-old bourbons from one of my favorite distilleries. This is 116.8 proof, about 50 bucks. I mean, this is one of the best values on the shelf and probably the most attainable. Rare Breed has maybe gotten a little bit harder to find in some places, but other than that, I mean, you could pretty much find it most of the time. I would say like 90% of the time I go to a liquor store, this is sitting there. So absolutely great alternative if you're looking for something high proof and something with some good age on it. Rare Breed, Wild Turkey, I mean, enough said. Third is Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof Tennessee Whiskey. While not labeled a bourbon, Jack Daniel's does meet the criteria required to be called a bourbon, as stated on this channel by the distillers themselves. That's right, Chris Fletcher and Lexi Phillips both said that Jack Daniel's meets the requirements to be called a bourbon.
We followed all the rules to be called a bourbon. We can be called a bourbon, but we are just pretty much like a bourbon plus.
But Tennessee whiskey is bourbon whiskey by definition. So our whiskey does qualify as bourbon whiskey.
Now, Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof is aged for an estimated 4 to 7 years. So yes, it's a big drop in age, but the flavors you get far outweigh the bottle stats. Full of ton of sweet flavors. I mean, we're talking about, maple syrup, banana bread, really rich cinnamons, chocolate. Sometimes you get a good store picks. Will sometimes have a nice dark red fruit flavor to it. So these can really run the spectrum, especially if you're looking at store picks. Plus, it's generally available everywhere for a cool 65 bucks. All right, next up in the BTAC that we have to find alternatives for, William LaRue Weller. Arguably the other favorite in the BTAC lineup. The Antique Collection's uncut, unfiltered, wheated bourbon. usually in the 120 to 140 proof range and bottled at 12 years old. This is my personal favorite of the BTAC series. I'm not a huge weeder guy, but I love the flavors in William LaRue Weller whenever I get to try it. When looking at the shelf, there are not a lot of weeded bourbons in the 12-year age range, especially at this high of proof. So not many options here, but there are a couple that fall somewhere near the criteria. So where do we turn to? One of the biggest names in weeded bourbons is Maker's Mark. Now, unfortunately, Maker's Mark doesn't really put out anything that's that high of age. I mean, we're talking about a 12-year product for William LaRue Weller. I don't think we really see anything above 6 or even 7 years old at Maker's. Fred mentioned the Maker's Mark cast strength, which is very easy to find in a great cast strength weeder for about 50 bucks. But I actually like the newer Maker's 46 cast strength a little bit more. Maker's 46 cast strength is the barrel proof version of the standard Maker's 46, which uses heavily seared French oak staves placed in just emptied standard Maker's Mark barrels, which are then refilled and returned to the warehouse for about 2 to 3 months, usually bottled between 108 to 114 proof-ish. I think the French oak staves give it some extra oak notes and some sweeter notes that you may find in William LaRue Weller. Yeah, listen, it's not the same, but it is a viable alternative, I think, for weeder fans looking for a bold but easy sipping experience. This isn't super easy to find since it was a distillery-only release at first and has since turned into a wider limited release. Remember, you do have the regular Maker's cast strength instead, as well as some other Maker's Mark bottles, such as the ones coming out of the finishing series. This is the SE4 times PR5, or as I like to call it, the R2D2. You have some of the other ones that have been released, the RC6, and then you also have some of the Maker's Mark private selects that have a different mix of staves that give you an array of flavors across the spectrum. So always really great alternatives. Yes, we're not that close in age when it comes to William LaRue Weller, but at least you're getting some high proof weeders that are available. Next up, which is a selection that may surprise you guys, and it's Larceny Barrel Proof from Heaven Hill. Truth be told, I did not like this bourbon at all until the most recent B521 release. It took Heaven Hill some time to get there, but finally, a good mix of weeded bourbon flavors with some cast strength punch. Again, you're looking at a lower age statement here, around 6 to 7 years, but we are talking cast strength weeded bourbon released 3 times a year with proofs in the 120 so far. Price about 65 bucks retail. It's caramel, it's nutty, but I will say that this latest batch, the B521, started getting some of those little bit more fruit-forward notes. Some of the weediness of the actual bourbon started coming out, which is what I was looking for. I mean, I felt like the ones before this were just tasting kind of like, I don't know, like hot Cracker Jacks. And I felt like I wanted a little bit more of a weeded bourbon profile. I'm not saying it gets close to William LaRue Weller, but at least it's getting closer. Hopefully, Larceny Barrel Proof continues on this path. Last thing I want to mention is Rebel Cast Strength. This is a weeded bourbon from Lux Row. Now, Rebel Yell, if you remember, goes all the way back to the Stitzel Weller days. But now the brand has become Rebel. They got rid of the Yell. These are cast strength, 120 proof store picks. If you have a place around you that does store picks, these are really great options, especially if you're a weeded bourbon fan. But you're getting a high proof weeder. These are about 120 proof. This isn't something you're going to be able to walk into the store and just pick up off the shelf. But if you live in an area or know someone that does a lot of store picks, like this one is one that we did for the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. These could be really, really delicious. Definitely keep an eye out for them. All right, we're moving on to the Handy. That's right. Next up is Thomas H. Handy, the uncut and unfiltered straight rye whiskey bottled at barrel proof and usually only around 6 years old. I think there are a lot more great ryes these days than there have ever been that could be even as impressive or even more impressive than this. Obviously, you want the rye to be a sweeter profile like the Thomas Handy and not the dill or black licorice note that you get with some, but I do think there are some pretty good options here. So I think Fred nailed this recommendation when he did his video. The Knob Creek Cast Strength Rye, high proof, set to be around 9 years old, older than the Thomas H. Handy. Proofs can range up into the 120s for this one and retails for about 70 bucks. Absolutely great recommendation that I agree with. This one happens to be 119.6 proof, Warehouse A. I mean, you could find these online. Again, this isn't going to be something that you're going to walk into a store, but these are laying around. A lot of people, just in general, don't really look at Knob Creek too much. So definitely look for this one if you're interested in Thomas H. Handy. Next one I'm going to recommend is Sagamore Spirit Cask Strength Rye. Today, this is a blend of 4 to 7 year old rye whiskeys. The 7-year-old contributes kind of like this chocolate, molasses, hazelnut flavor, and the 4-year-old adds those bright citrus and spicy notes that you find with a good rye whiskey. A great pickup for about $75 with proofs that range from 110 to 120. This is Sagamore Spirits on the younger distillery side. They haven't been around that long, but they are pumping out some absolutely delicious rye whiskeys. They actually, also have a couple of finishes. They have a cognac finish, a port finish, but this Sagamore Spirit Cask Strength Rye, I think, is one of the hidden gems that's sitting on the shelf, especially if you like a higher proof rye whiskey. Lastly, I'm going to recommend Wilderness Trail, which is another brand that you guys have heard me talk about before. Their rye whiskeys are some of my favorite ryes that I've tried recently. Their Kentucky Straight Rye these are all cask strength, off the shelf. 56% rye, 33% corn, and 11% malted barley. They age their rye whiskeys on the upper floors of their rickhouses for a minimum of 4 years, with the regular expressions expected to be between 6 to 8 years of age. These are also single barrel offerings, so some could be more sweet, some could get a little bit more minty, but at barrel proof, non-chill filtered, getting some good age for only about $60. This is a perfectly good alternative that's very available, and their single barrel store picks, the same type of store picks I mentioned with the Rebel, can be insanely good. So yeah, Wilderness Trail, this one's 116 proof. One of my favorite newer distilleries out in Danville, Kentucky. I don't think they're really new anymore. I don't think you could call them craft distillery anymore. Dr. Pat Heist and the team over there is doing absolutely amazing things at Wilderness Trail. If you have not tried their rye yet, give it a go. All right, now we're going to get into the last two, and these were really tough to figure out. I only have a very itty-bitty bit of this one left. I shared this one a lot. Eagle Rare 17. I got this bottle last year for the first time, and while I thought it was good, came across a bit oaky, drying, a bit flat over time the more you sipped it. It was okay. Certainly not worth the $2,000 price point that some are charging for it. It's bottled at 101 proof, and even though it says 17 the last couple of years, this has actually been an 18-year-old bourbon. It's really hard to look at the stats of this bottle and find an available alternative that's good enough to give you this type of age and proof. So I figured out, I think, two decent alternatives here. Again, both of these may be harder to find, but I think can go head to head with Eagle Rare 17. Now, Fred recommended Knob Creek 12, which I actually think was a great idea. This made my top 10 last year and might be more available than the two I'm going to recommend, but I think the Knob Creek 12 is a fantastic option. I actually had this the other night for the first time in a while and forgot how good this stuff is. A 12-year-old bourbon at 100 proof for $70 is an absolute no-brainer. Again, Knob Creek, Jim Beam, putting out amazing stuff that people still tend to overlook a bit. So another option I chose is right here, Calumet 15. Calumet 15 is from Western Spirits. This is a 15-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey with some pretty impressive stats. Comes in at 105 proof. It's non-chill filtered. Retails for about $130. Mash bill of 74 corn, 18 rye, and 8% malted barley. If you know your mash bills, you know that this is sourced from Barton, the same great folks that bring us the brands of 1792. Now, they released a 14-year last year, and Calumet does have a 12-year-old version as well on the shelf, I think with a 10-year and I think an 8-year, if I'm correct. But this Calumet 15 was close to Eagle Rare 17 for me because of the oak and almost medicinal cherry notes that come through. This has the age, proof, and flavors that I think can compete with ER 17, even though you may have to search for this one just a little bit more. But I think as a viable alternative, you don't have to pay $2,000 to get this. It's only $130. You're getting something high in age, something with, I'm not going to say it's close in flavor, but it's pretty close if you like that rich cherry note that Eagle Rare 17 brings. My second recommendations is the Remus Repeal Reserve Series. More notably, Remus Repeal 3 and 5. Both of these brands from MGP, now just recently named to Ross and Squibb, which I think sounds like a law firm that's just making whiskey in their backyard. Remus Repeal brings us high-aged bourbons in each and every blend. This year's 5 contains 13-year-old high rye whiskey, but there's still a fairly significant amount of 15 and 16-year-old bourbons in the blend as well. These are bottled at 100 proof, and I think blending different ages helps with eliminating some of those oaky and dry notes that you could sometimes get with the Eagle Rare 17. It's sweet, it's rich, the 5 is so damn crushable. The 3 from 2 years ago is like sipping cherry cola and spice. I absolutely love it. That one is a blend of 11 and 12-year bourbons. So each year you could be on the lookout for these. These are great offerings from an absolute powerhouse distillery for a price of about 90 to 100 bucks. I mean, everyone's been talking how good the 5 is. I did a blind against Eagle Rare 17, and the Remus 5 actually won out, I think because of that little bit of spice that it brings. It was just a little bit more interesting on the palate for me. As I said, you might have to search for these a little bit, but you know, if you have friends in other states, I can maybe check for you. You can go to the website and find out exactly what states they're available. But these are obtainable, and they are a great price and just great bourbons. All right, last one is the Saz 18. I don't have a Saz 18. I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to buy that bottle. So I'm gonna pour a little Thomas H. Handy since we're staying in the realm of rye here. But Thomas H. Handy is the younger of the 2 that come out in the BTAC series. But last one to match up, and easily the most difficult, is the Sazerac 18. The famed Sazerac Coffee House, which was founded in 1850 on Exchange Alley in New Orleans, Louisiana, soon gained fame as the home of America's first cocktail known as the Sazerac. So Sazerac and Sazerac 18 pays homage to that. There's not a lot of super high-aged Kentucky rye out there, unfortunately. But Saz 18 is only 90 proof, and in that regard, I think there are some alternatives, but it will really depend on your palate. I actually think Michter's 10-year single barrel rye is one of the best alternatives to Saz 18, but it's also very hard to find and priced north of $150. So I have a couple more options. So Fred's pick, if you see the video, was Russell's Reserve 6-year rye. I do like that pick. I love the 6-year age statement, also 90 proof, which makes it sweeter and less spicy and edgy for a rye at only 40 bucks. But I wanted to go a step further here. So my pick was actually the Russell's single barrel. Why? Well, a bit of a higher proof at 104. So I realize we are going 14 proof points higher than the Saz 18, but this is non-chill filtered and gives you some more texture that I think the 6-year Russell's misses out on. Flavors of vanilla, orange, honey, charred oak, and most importantly, what I think this gives you is hints of some medicinal cherry, which is something I've tasted in Saz 18 before. No age statement, but I think this being non-chill filtered, single barrel, and 104 proof makes up for it being an NAS and a bit more expensive at 65 bucks. But generally, these are pretty available. Definitely take a look at it. Lastly, I think is going to be one kind of out of left field. Like I said, there are a lot of good rye whiskeys out there, but I think what you're looking for is something with some good age on it, something a little bit sweeter in profile like the Saz 18, and also something around that 90 proof point. So I actually selected Sagamore Spirit Double Oaked. Now, I mentioned Sagamore earlier for their cast strength offerings, but this one is a very beautiful sweet sipper. After aging this straight rye whiskey for 4 to 5 years in high char New American oak barrels, it's then transferred into toasted wave stave barrels for an additional 18 months. You're looking at caramel, vanilla, toffee, Nutella, which is my favorite hazelnut chocolate spread that I used to have growing up. A little bit of that marshmallow flavor all coming in at a cool 96.6 proof. So we're getting a little bit closer to the proof of a Sazerac 18. I think the toasting, that extra barrel maturation, gives the illusion of some more aged and richer and sweeter rye notes that you get in the Saz 18. I don't think it has the sweet cherry notes that you get in the Saz 18, but I think it makes up for it with some delicious sweet rye flavors. And you could find this for about 65 bucks as well. So this one was a surprise to me when I first tried it. Absolutely love this stuff. While, you know, again, Saz 18 is a really hard one to match up against, but I think there are 2 really good options there that could get you somewhere in the ballpark. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this video for my alternatives to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. This is a very hard challenge to think about. So I want to thank Fred Minnick for, you know, kind of posing the challenge. I hope some other channels do it as well. You know, Stag, William LaRue Weller, Eagle Rare, Thomas H. Handy, and the Saz 18. They're all such unique and high age pours. It is hard to find some viable options for it. But in the world of bourbon today, there are so many bourbons and so many good ones that you can get that I think can go head to head with these. Leave a comment down below if there are any alternatives that you think I missed that I'm missing out on, or alternatives that you have that you've maybe gone head to head with that are a little bit more available. Definitely let me know. If you liked the video, hit the subscribe button below. Also hit the like button. If you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. And with that, as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time right here on The Mash and Drum. Take care, everybody. Gonna have some Thomas H. Handy.